everyone. You'll notice a few people are missing. Hopefully they're having fun somewhere. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll motion to approve.
Can I have a second?
I will second.
You. And then we have our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And then,
You want to call a vote?
oh, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. My first time doing this, gang, if you haven't noticed. Bob's very punctual.
Bob, can you hear us?
I can, thank you. Yep.
Hi, Bob.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry I'm not there in person.
I'm trying to step up as best I can. So the action item for this evening is to consider the parking garage agreement related to the Genesis Building redevelopment that we went over the other evening. And as a reminder, it's 101 East State Street, which is at State and Union, and 128 East State Street, which is State and Broad. They're asking for parking spaces per their
New development.
new development. Thank you.
Uh,
You want to go over that?
Sure. I can get into the questions that were raised, and then if there are any questions on what the deal itself was, but basically two updates, and Counselor Angus is here if we have any further questions. One, in a case like this, the county will try to tax every parcel, and then the borough or township has to apply to make that tax exempt. So that's sort of the system that you work under. So we are confident in our case that it would be exempt, but obviously you don't know until that process happens. So that's when we say that we have confidence in, and we have reason for it, but we can't say for certain that it won't be. So that's the process. We would then go through it. We've done this before plenty of times with the county. The second piece would be, whether this fits into this discussion or is sort of a separate ongoing process. I would argue it's a separate process. The borough needs to have a large user in order to support the debt that we have for this garage, which means that we have to have some type of contract, whether it's this one or with another user, which means that we're going to run into that question either way. The question that you would have then is
What question? I'm a little confused.
question whether it's tax exempt. the
Okay.
Garage. Yep. The natural question from that would be then, do you add a provision into this contract that the user should be responsible for paying those taxes if it is in fact not tax exempt? My opinion is that we've negotiated aggressively here and that we don't have further room to make that request. So having said that, the recommendation is to approve the proposal. And obviously I'll work with Councilor Rongus to try to set up the contract as favorably as we can.
So the concern here is that if we rent the garage to a commercial user, in this case, that we will be reclassified as not exempt, and the borough will have to pay county and school district taxes on the garage.
That's correct.
Okay, and your argument is that, or your, not argument, but your thinking through this is that we're going to have some user of the garage to help subsidize the debt on the building. And so we'll just have to see what the county does, but there's no way to recoup that, in your opinion, from the buyer or the renter.
That's, yes.
Okay.
So we want to,
Council discussion and public discussion?
so we've already agreed to discuss this yet, or forgot where we were at.
You'd probably make a motion and then discuss.
Can I have a motion to discuss the action item for the parking garage agreement.
So moved.
Second?
Council like to discuss this. Joel, do you have an opinion?
I'd agree with Kyle.
Julie?
I mean, I think I have to build the building. The garage, them to operate like the other buildings had before, so I think we have. I think there's a.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Norris and Kyle and Nick for pushing hard on the negotiation with this user. It's a tricky situation because it's one garage and one user, but I think you did a good job explaining to them what the costs are of operating that garage. Thank you.
I just appreciate letting us keep this on action agenda just to get a little bit more clarification. So thank you, Kyle, for looking into more of that. And yeah, that's all for me.
I don't take lightly the fact that we're looking into the tax exempt stuff. I think they're two different issues. We've also negotiated an increase in pricing for the garage that keeps up with the cost of keeping up the garage. So we're managing that because there has not been a price increase in parking spaces in quite some time. So we've managed to do that as well. And I think taking them as two separate entities is important. I think it's important that we, the only way this building's gonna get sold is if it has the parking attached to it. So. Does Mr. Norris wanna chime in?
Happy to. Thank you, Kathleen. And again, sorry for not being there in person tonight. I think Troy brought up a very good point on Monday evening. Sorry, am I back with you? Am I back with you? Can you hear me?
On that note, can I have a vote on action item? Public comment.
While we have a small interruption, we actually need the motion to be to approve the agreement, not to have the discussion. So I move that council approve the agreement that was negotiated by the manager and the president.
Second.
Can I offer
Can
a
we
slight
just get
amendment?
a clarification on that for the chair? It's the to approve the agreement and to allow the borough manager and the solicitor to finalize the agreement to those terms, just because the agreement is not set yet.
Thank you, Ann.
Yep. That's
So
just for the
moved.
clarification.
So moved.
And second.
Okay, all right. So I've gotten pretty well versed over the past year around tax exemption and so forth. And again, I brought it to council once before on another property and it was found what I said was accurate and that property was flipped from exempt to commercial. I spent probably 45 minutes with the chief assessor for Chester County and she felt confident that based on the way that contract was written was that it would be switched to commercial and then we would be able to, as a borough, go back and say what percentage was still borough use versus what is committed. The thing that sticks out to me is that you can't ever go back on this. It's a perpetual lease of those spots because you have an ordinance that has to have a certain amount of parking spaces. The other thing that's very concerning to me is we have multiple locations where the borough has given up parking. We have existing merchants that continue to be constrained on where they can park. This one's written that the two buildings get preferential proximity, which means the other merchants have to park on the upper levels or whatever. So I understand, you know, it's a great deal for the borough, but again, there's a potential liability. Thank you for acknowledging that. But then there's the other side of it is, are you doing disparate treatment for newcomers compared to existing merchants? And I ask you to think about that because Gish, you gave up parking spots. The old Borough Hall, you gave up parking spots. In fact, those are deeded. You go down State Street, you gave up 2 parcels for $14,000 a year for parking for that. And now you're doing the same thing there. So you really are down, I think we said 20% of the parking garage is all it's available for everybody else. Longwood Gardens and all
Talked
that.
about not a give time, not everybody, not all the spaces at a time, and also almost the same amount that it was before when Genesis was operating in those buildings. Therefore, it's the same situation it was before.
I would beg to differ because we have more businesses down here now,
The footprint hasn't changed.
but we have more businesses and more people coming in. And I think another individual resident had mentioned people that are in the apartments aren't necessarily going to be vacating those parking spots. We talked about Mushroom Festival. We talked about all those things. So I just want to make sure I get my say out here because I spend a lot of time looking at it. I'm not sure how confident I am that even though we have great solicitors, that you're going to actually win that argument with the county. Thanks.
Charlotte Watson, 523 Magnolias. Just to give you some,
We need you to speak into the microphone. Thank you.
just to give you some insight, the first building had parking, the second one didn't. I was at the hearing. I had an argument with Walker. 4 men attacked me. The architect came over to make sure my questions were answered. It did not have parking. The second building did not have parking.
They
We
took
argued
o-
about that.
They took over the parking behind the former library. That was all turned into permanent parking for Genesis 128.
No, it was
parking lot-
not. It was
A
not.
lot,
The
we
old
had a
parking.
business back then, so I know as much
I
as
hear
you
what
do
you're
about.
saying, but I was at the hearing.
Okay,
And I questioned the lawyer, Walker, and all the rest of them. So what they put on paper must be something different than what they're doing in actual action plan.
Wayne lot that is now.
Behind the library was never behind the old library and post office was never for Genesis. That parking lot was solely created for the post office and the library in 1963.
I understand.
And also the fact there was a contract with the library, with the county, because that's where I went over and got it. That contract, that was not contracted for any Genesis. That was contracted for public use and always has been a public use parking lot. Always. It was never for any business to have solely, never. So I don't know where you new people get your information, but we know it because we parked there. We know it because we lived here and interfaced in the action plan at the time. You can't rewrite history. You just can't rewrite it. And that's what's constantly being done here. Second Genesis building never had parking. And that was my argument with them. How they were even going to get their supplies out of that little alley.
Holly Peters, 109 South Broad Street. I agree with what both of them say in expressing the concern to the borough and to council that it seems that when, new parties are coming into town, that we make all these kinds of accommodations for them for parking, and yet for existing businesses and property owners here, we're looking to take their parking that's been around their buildings for a long time. And as a person who has a big building right across the street from all that, I'm very concerned because I'm always told that I have, if I have a larger use for my building, that I need to purchase parking spots at in lieu of parking relief at $7,500 a clip. And then I'm told, well, where would they go? Well, they would park in the parking garage. Again, there's a precedent here where we seem to give away public stuff or allocate public stuff into deeds of new developers coming into town at the expense of the folks that are already here. And how are we doing that? Is the parking lot behind my building the next one? Because it's already completely chopped up by a much smaller building in that whole intersection that has 9 spots. The next smallest building has 7 spots, and the American Legion, which is the largest building that has the back of that parking lot to it, and then mine is the second largest. We're told that we get nothing except that we have to pay for parking if we want more larger uses.
So we are asking.
Per spot.
$900 per spot with a 3% increase annually.
So 900 and how many spots? 58 spots, right?
No, closer to 400.
400. Okay. So in lieu of parking for an individual building such as mine is $7,500 per spot, according to what I was told by code. So there's a big difference there.
No, just to clarify, and this shouldn't take up her time, but the 7,500 is one time. If you're increasing your use, that requires more parking.
Understand that.
I'm just clarifying though, that's not the same as the annual cost for them to rent those spaces from us. So currently, if you wanted to go and get a pass for someone, it would be $840. Our agreement is $900 with this user, so we're charging them more than everyone else.
Okay, fair enough. But again, do those buildings, did they have parking with them? I mean, I understand the Walker, that was part of where the 101 Street people parked, right? But what about and where were the ones that were across the street from me? Where was their parking when that building was built?
So it was a combination of things. It was the main garage, it was the parking lot behind the library in the center. It was the Wayne Stain lot, which is now the new library. They had permanent parking along Cypress Street, around Broad.
But behind us, there were some spots that were reserved for them. It wasn't the entire
Not the
parking
entire lot, but
Right,
there was some,
right,
yeah, that
yeah.
had the permanent only 9 to 5.
Right.
Monday through Friday.
Understand. I guess I'm just concerned for, as these folks are, the other 30 or 40 businesses that reside within a few blocks of that, and how that's going to impact long-term. You know, that's a huge issue, as parking always is in this town. So I would urge you to reconsider.
So the parking is less than what, if Genesis was full today with all the Genesis.
Genesis on our street was never full.
Right.
It never hit its full
But
occupancy.
So it's not more than what was deeded to those buildings to begin with.
In theory, but
Right.
in practice, it could play out to be something entirely different. And again, you're leaving 15 or 20% to the rest of the merchants in town. So
I think my biggest concern is how many we are giving them closest numbers that they say they have closest, and where those are going to be, and we have not deemed where those will be specifically.
Maybe we leave that as.
It's really a priority item because in order to, there are 2 users they're going after, which is residential. It's valuable for them to have space when they come home late at night as a resident. The other side, which is maybe more impactful, is they're going after healthcare users. And in that particular market, parking spaces that are dedicated is really a game changer. That is a major selling point in order to fill that 101 building with offices, which should be a priority for us to bring office use into that building to drive traffic to our local businesses. I think both are important. Yeah.
We're basically, by virtue of our surrounding area, turning into a small city. Being somebody who was raised in a big city, you don't always get the priority of parking right at your home. It's not like owning a piece of property, you get to park right at your home. Even in our small downtown, you don't always get to park right in front of your house, depending on whether you have a driveway or not. So, my concern, and I said this the other night, was that 49 around 128, that's a lot of spaces you promise if you're going to stay right around. So my concern is, how close do they expect to be?
They're all within the garage. So like the
Okay.
space near the,
It's not on this, you're not talking about dedicating street parking.
right, this is within the garage.
Okay.
Uh,
And I think
So-
that's important for them to hear. that
So
it's
they-
about taking away street
So the proposed residents of that 128 would get like first floor in the garage, is that right?
Yeah.
So that means like our patrons that come into town at night for dinner would have to go up to the upper levels.
Trade-offs. Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, the merchants getting deprioritized. So, not a fan of it.
So, your time is done.
Well, it was taken up a lot by the,
Oh, no, I paused it. I've
Yeah.
been pausing it when anyone else talks, so you've
Okay.
been speaking for 4 minutes.
I'm listening.
Okay. I frankly don't, it's a very large garage for a small town to have with an extremely large loan on it. So there's a bond, well, it's not a mortgage, it's a municipal bond that covered the cost of building that garage. And I hear you about the parking. I want to do the best for parking, but frankly, it's hard to justify that garage existing without a large user. And the large user is obviously going to be the person who's in those buildings. And so it just seems to me that we kind of have to do this. There will still be 90 parking spaces in the garage for other users besides the users of those two big buildings. And it seems to me that this is like financially something we really just have to do, even if it's not ideal. It would be great to have a 500-person parking garage for a town of our size so that anyone could park anytime, but that's just not realistic.
There maybe eventually could end on the park garage, right? Like you said, you can go up more, like, there are maybe ways to eventually get it bigger, but I do think we are a little tied to building, utilizing that parking, or that parking garage.
I would just encourage you to explore any options to put them on some of the upper floors with hopes for expansion for later.
Not all of them are dedicated spots, just so we're clear.
Carrie Dickman, 620 Magnolia Court. I was glad to finally hear the 90 for the other users. I was waiting to hear that number. Has the borough done a traffic study where we know what the average daily use in that garage has been over time? Do we have more than 90 daily users using that garage? And if so, if we have more than that as our average daily and we're taking that away from them, where is the expectation that they will park? Are they going to be parking in the library YMCA lot? Are we going as part of our traffic study to look at, I don't know what you want to call it, the diagonal parking along State Street so that we can increase parking on State Street? But if more, do we have a study, like I said, on the use? And if it's more than 90, where's the expectation that they'll park?
Sure. So just to clarify, 79 of the spaces are the committed spaces. The others are them buying a pass that any resident or frankly anyone could buy a pass. The expectation is that probably on most times, not every one of those people is going to be parking in the garage, but we really want to encourage people to park on the street closest to the merchants. We still have the extra lot behind the old Borough building. We still have all the on-street parking. We will look at expanding on-street parking. This is just dealing with the garage, and it's taking up, I believe it's 12 more spaces than Genesis had. So it's really trying to keep the same footprint of what Genesis was and what the garage was built, planning to be used for, just at a higher rate for us. And obviously because Genesis is not going to be that user.
I understand the logic behind all of it, but my question remains, was a study done that looked at average daily use currently in that garage? Because that answers the questions, Ms. Peters and the other merchants, to be able to say to them, our average daily use was less than 90 spots. So there will be plenty of parking for your customers. If the answer to that is we don't know, then that isn't the right time in my mind to adopt this. Like I said, I understand the theory and I understand the need for the revenue, but we need to have a plan in place that our merchants have a customer base, and it's a pretty established customer base for a lot of those merchants, that they have some assurance that there's somewhere for them to park, and that for those of us who are residents, we're not going to start seeing spillover running down Linden, running down Sickle, running down all of the side streets, all the way down to the apartments that are parking on the street because they charge too much to park underneath the apartment that has parking built for them. So that's my question. It's just, have we done it, all of our due diligence ahead of time to know that we have parking for our current merchants because we know what our daily use was in that garage?
No, we have not done a study on it.
We do have a study planned.
Yeah, it's in progress.
It's in progress. Prior to the arms going into how long, Rob, how long have we had the arm on the garage? And how many metered spots did we have? So prior to this, we only had metered spots available to the public on the first level of the garage. That was it. So we have a lot more available to us in current time than we have in the past when Genesis had the entire parking garage. That was all permitted, metered, permit only, except for the meters.
Probably like
There were actually a little more than that. I will tell you that having the gates in does give you a count. So it's just getting into the program and looking at it. It will give you the count for each day.
The truth is, we still will have more than 95 available. Not all 405.
Right.
I think like everybody's missing that. It's not like 400 people are going to be sitting in the parking lot every day and every spot's going to get used. People move.
Correct.
So-
And then you're going to hear people come in and say, I have a parking pass that I purchased and I got home last night late because I was on vacation and the parking lot was full and I had nowhere to park, but you owe me a parking spot. So you have to assume that every spot you're giving away, those 402 spots, are going to be used, which would only leave us, you said 90 spots. You can't make a plan assuming that people aren't going to use their parking spot.
I need to clarify though, because there are the dedicated spaces, right? That'll have, whatever signage on them. The other spaces, the 300 something spaces, are for 9 to 5, users, not dedicated. So the sort of magic of the Genesis model has been that when you get your surge of, shoppers at night, those office users, not 100%, but many of them have left for the day. So that's why it works, that you can, and this is the issue with sort of counting one space at a time, is that often those spaces are double parked in one day because the person comes in, they leave. So it goes 360, or it goes back to what we were at, is that's the value in trying to attract an office user, is that you can get double parking out of many of those spaces. The borough's getting a lot of value as a community in that kind of model. So it doesn't change it, some of the stuff you're saying, but just a lot of those are meant to be flexible double use spaces.
So how many renters How many are residential between those two buildings developed? How many residential spots are there?
The 128 building was asking for 153 spots. 49 would be dedicated. The 101
Well,
building,
it says 49 are designated full-time use near the entrance. Are you saying the other ones are flexible?
yes, they don't have a dedicated spot.
They don't have a dedicated
So they could be on the top floor, they could be on the bottom floor,
Right.
they could be the back.
But they
the-
could all be parked there on, okay.
There's only 58 apartments, just so we're clear. Does council have anything else that they want to? Oh, Daniel, were you getting up for this? Come on.
Daniel Embry with Kennett Collaborative, 106 West State Street. My assessment of this parking arrangement is that it's very positive. I know that a lot of the community was concerned about possibly reducing or the possibility of reducing the number of parking spaces per residential unit, which is not the case. You've made no concessions. Even the studio apartments will have 2 spaces. So all of the minimum requirements that the zoning sets forth are met. I find that really awesome that you were able to reach that arrangement. I'm pleased with the percentage of dedicated spots compared to the reserved spots more generally. And I do think that with the use of medical and office at 101, that will be very complementary to the residents and also to the cadence of kind of traffic for merchants and restaurants. I'm imagining doctor's offices and visitors to dentists, going to dentist appointments and things like that in that building. And the times of day are very different. Even if all 50 apartments go on vacation on the exact same day, and in the unlikely scenario that they all 50 of them have 2 cars, and that's 100 cars, that's still leaving quite a bit of space that would be able to turn over from kind of daytime office use. And so anyway, I think that this is positive. I've heard positive feedback from other merchants. Of course, there's going to be mixed feedback in any proposal, but I did want to voice that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bob would like to make a comment. on
Thanks,
this.
Kathleen. Can you hear me this time?
Bob, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me? Can you not hear me?
Bob?
Can you not hear me, Kathleen? No?
Have a connection. He's allowed to speak.
I'm sorry, guys. No luck? No luck, Kathleen? No?
Whoever might be. Volume is it up?
Hey, all right. Oh, so it's just us? Can't hear? I don't know what.
Yeah, we could do a phone or something. That's fine.
Does this work at all or not?
Yes.
There you go.
No?
Yeah, it works. Just, you can start talking.
My apologies again to everyone in the room for not being there in person tonight. I just wanted to add that frankly, this agreement is being done to help revitalize the downtown. The loss of Genesis from those 2 buildings has had an enormous impact on the shops and restaurants and bars and so forth in town. The other issue I think we have to consider is that we have over $500,000 annual debt to afford the operating and capital and debt costs for the garage, that there's no way we're going to be able to pay without dipping into the general fund and stopping other programs we have. If we don't have a large user, it's important to know that that's a big debt that we're not paying right now. As a matter of fact, we're $341,000 in debt from Genesis not paying for the last roughly year since last May. The garage was built to allow for the 101 building. That was why it was built. And these are the two the largest buildings in our downtown district. I think when you consider the negatives and the concerns, and then you pair that up against 9th Street Development Corporation, they've been incredibly responsible, flexible partners in the discussions back and forth in terms of what the town is looking for and what they're offering and the quality of what they're offering and what they've done in other municipalities. The terms, I think everyone agrees, are very, very fair. Bob Norris?
But also he dropped off Zoom.
I don't know where you lost me, guys. I'll stop. It's really important that we get this done. And I'll just stay on the line to vote whenever the vote comes up.
Is there any further public comment?
So at this point, we're going to vote on the motion to, what am I saying?
Approve the letter of intent and allow the solicitor and the borough manager to
Finalize.
formalize the agreement in accordance with the letter of intent.
Can I have a vote? Joel?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Ellie?
Aye.
Dan? And my vote's aye. It's unanimous. Our next item is the public comment on any other that we have going on. Anybody wants to? We just voted. No. We have a workshop next. This is the voting meeting. So the next thing is, yes.
We're done with the rest of the meeting until public comment. Yes.
For anything that was not on the agenda. And public comments are welcome and encouraged to be at a maximum of 4 minutes. And
We heard you. We saw it really working today at 4 minutes.
Mhm.
We saw it really working.
Good.
All right, because it wasn't. Let me clarify that. I want to tell you about those garages, and I need a little bit more explanation because what you people saying is so confusing, it's a crying shame. Number one, there are 2 garages there. Or should I say Part A and Part B? Part A was originally built with the first Genesis building with Wank Walker and all his cronies. And they were the people contractually committed to the first garage that I know of. And with the first garage being contracted, the payoff for the first garage, when we talk about debt, I want to clarify this, because the payoff for that bond was 2023. All right, let's fast forward to one of these councils when Bosley sat on, and some of the council people voted for that they extend that bond a couple years before it was to come due, letting on we need so much maintenance up there. We didn't need no maintenance. And the bond was expended. We were told, oh, it's going to cut this and cut that. Why would you expend something that was only in a few years of payoff to 2023? And I lived those years, so I was here. So we had a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't right being done in this borough and continues to be so. So then we need the second garage. We call it the second one, that little slap two next to it. I don't know nothing about that, but that's fairly new. First off, I haven't been in any of the garage. For your information, I haven't been in any of the businesses uptown. And when we talk about we need so much done for the businesses, you're talking about 4 or 5 entities. But you ignored that right across the street, mostly minority owned, regulated, and operated, is totally ignored by you. If you don't know what that looks like, I do, and so do they. And flourishes more than your downtown district. But you don't talk about that. But you're worried about this debt for the second one. I don't know where all this debt came from. Because the second garage must be the debt. When Durfler's, Ethan, and all theirs, their council came through. All that stuff was built. So we got a real problem here when we talk about parking. Street parking can never be considered as adequate parking for a business. That's not allowed. That is not allowed. They have to provide their own. So when you talk about that apartment and those residents and all of that, whoever that businessman is has to accommodate them. Totally. And you sit here saying you're hurting for money, yet there's no parking spaces in front of the mayor's house. Let's get those meters back. They used to be there. And it was blocked off during the Mushroom Festival. And the vendors could have been there if you didn't want citizens to park. Let's go down by the Friends home. Let's go continually down to the new apartments where we got a blind view and are scared to death somebody's going to come through that light and hit us because you can't see a thing when those cars park there. You can't see a thing because the building and then cars on both sides. And you have yet to look and do a traffic drive-through to say, we need to put meters in there. We need to go 500 feet back, no parking. So when you start telling us about all the safety and what you're worried about, I'm tired of coming to these meetings and you're only worried about 2 blocks.
Thank you.
Okay, since this horse isn't quite dead yet, I would ask, as far as the town, we use the parking garage during snow emergency. If people are going to be in their residential, they're probably going to be still in there. So when we start considering all the other contingent uses of that parking garage, has that been discussed on what you're doing as far as vacating all those vehicles off of Union Street and other streets for the plowing? Where do those vehicles go?
Yeah, we're still planning to use that as a snow emergency area,
Okay.
the garage.
And so when you look at the daily, again, you got the gate. Sometimes we leave the gate up when we have an emergency. So again, just be careful, how to lie with statistics is a course at University of Delaware I had to take. Just be careful that there are other spikes that happen for the use of that garage. And I understand you'll work with the attorney to get the language right, but if you could put in caveats around certain emergency situations that would overrule what is the BAU kind of approach, I think would be helpful, because a lot of those people, they're probably not going to be attending or hearing this meeting. They'll just realize, hey, I got to move my car, and they have no place to put it. The other thing I would caution is when we start talking about parking, we have an aggregate view of past approvals where businesses have been given accommodations, including the library, ones that are pending, like the removal of 4 parking spots off of the widen the sidewalk on Union Street. Because I don't think it's just this one thing. I think it's the crescendo of everything coming across that's squeezing the merchants that are here. And so when we look at that, we should probably have a total view of where were we a year ago on parking, 2 years ago, and where are we now for public parking? Because Julie, I heard what you're saying. We didn't really change the footprint, but we have, because we have committed other public assets to sole use. In fact, even put it in deeds So there is no recourse for the borough. So, you know, we should be baselining that so that when merchants come up or when Daniel talks about, hey, the merchants are for this, we have some kind of a baseline of what is factual versus emotion when it comes in here. And believe me, I'm one of the most emotional ones, as you know, when I come in here. But I think that would help to have that kind of a baseline so we know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're in the middle of a parking study that's specifically focused on the main corridor of State Street. Looking at more on street or different arrangements or, you know, that whole system. Secondly, a plug for our workshop later is a comprehensive plan. What you're talking about, taking a fresh look, looking at historical, you know, approaches and kind of where they are now. That's exactly the kind of thing that you do in a comprehensive plan. So maybe a short term and sort of the long term bigger fix are those two options.
Like we have time to prepare and maybe looking at the whole situation and not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying is as you get incremental ones that keep coming every month, it's easy to lose track of that. And in aggregate, all of a sudden you're outside of the capacity.
Are we ready for our workshop now? Oh, I'm sorry.
Carrie Dickman again, 620 Magnolia Court. I'm here, I want to make a request. I have been attending the Planning Commission meetings. We are not being given any time to speak at them. They run from 5:30 to 6:30, and then everybody gets up and leaves, or they say, well, all right, you can have a quick 30 seconds.
Because there's another meeting right
Because
behind
there's
it.
another meeting right behind it. The development of NVF, I'm a member of my neighborhood. I speak not for me, I'm speaking for my neighborhood. We're asking for input. We've been told we could have input. Mayor Fedek had a meeting. We've never had the follow-up meeting to get the, I don't know if we still have a federal department left of it, but to get input and look at all the parameters to it. The reason it matters to me tonight is because our next zoning meeting is the 16th. It will be followed by the work session October 6th, and you're voting the 8th. And at the last meeting, they said they were bringing to the October meeting the ordinance, which means if you can't encourage them to open that meeting up and give us input, we're going to have to fill this place for the October meeting to try and get input before a vote. And that's counterintuitive. It's counterproductive. It's just not good for anybody to turn it into that. And because the borough isn't writing that ordinance, Rockhopper's writing that ordinance, with their attorney sits there and I have their emails that they give out at the meeting, you know, and there's a little bit of talk up there, but there's no talk and feedback from the public, of whom many of us who attend have got college degrees on top of college degrees with legal degrees. We have a lot to offer and we're not being allowed, and we're now one meeting away from that coming before you. And the piece that's still, in my mind, missing from it, they discuss whether or not my community felt like we were integrated into the borough, or they don't want just separate neighborhoods. They want that borough feel. Well, if you want a borough feel, then part of any zoning ordinance for residential should be that it has to tie into the grid system. Shouldn't be part of the salvo, it should be part of the ordinance itself requires that there is a tie-in to the grid. And that would be best for Kennett, it's best for police, it's best for fire, it's best for everyone. And that is not in that. Right now we have developers saying, well, it doesn't really work because we want to put buildings over there, so we can't open up Lafayette. I understand what they want, but it's what the community wants. And to have that tie-in and the place for it, like I said, should be in that ordinance, but we haven't had any chance to discuss it at planning because we're frozen out. So hopefully you guys can make a change by next week and get them to shift those meetings so that there is a time. Because if not, like I said, then it's going to have to be at your borough meeting. And bring a sleeping bag. Thank you.
Could I just share an update on that? Our chair of the planning commission heard this concern, you, Carrie, Troy, a couple others. So he's proposed flipping those meetings so that the planning commission goes second, so that there's not a hard backup to it, specifically to allow more time for public comment. So when we release it, that's,
Planning will be at 6:30,
uh,
5:30.
I think, but we're still confirming the time just to make sure schedules all work. But the idea is put planning second so that you're not backed up, specifically to address that concern.
Then the only thing I would say is it would be nice if that came out sooner rather than later so that people can make plans, babysitting plans. There's just, the public also needs to make sure they can attend when it's been on there and it's advertised at 5:30 to make a shift.
We understand.
That's tough.
What I'm saying is we're trying to, we hear that concern and we're changing based on it. So we'll get it out as soon as we can.
Thank you.
There's still public comment?
I spoke to Mr. Lippick this afternoon, as I have done over the last years, even when the NVF took that equipment out of there on flatbed trucks unwrapped. Called him then, in those years. Spoke to him again. I spoke to him repeatedly, and so have other residents in this town. That is your state person that we call directly for DEP. You have not done anything. And they're waiting to hear from you was one of their things. He had been waiting, but I called him to tell him there's two different stories. The one that's being publicized on that internet, on your website. The one the Chester County Press wrote in the newspaper in regards to that last meeting. That it was your representatives who said everything we said. We were only asked, what are your questions? And of course, they were going to put me out over and over, and that's fine. I'm used to being beat up. Luckily, my husband don't try, okay? Bottom line, Pettit nor Joel said any of those things that was written in that article. We did. We did. I've done the research on it over and over, and from the 1992 federal reports when NVF could not pass 2 times. And they went on our business because they couldn't pass the contamination. That's what we're talking about. We can't even get to where they were at in the planning. I don't know how they got to planning. And I was at that meeting too. I don't know how they got to planning. Because the homework has not been done, nor has the foundation been laid to give us a thorough explanation to the contaminant aspect of that property. You can't do nothing until you do that. And I know people are pushing you for that, and they got something to gain out of that. Because anybody with good sense would not put anybody in a position where you're going to be exposing them to not only if you touch it, but it is an inhalant, Joel, that can hurt us. Because you and Pettit said, no, it wasn't. It is an inhalant perspective to that property that could hurt people. And people within 1.8 miles of a Superfund site like that, and it was a Superfund site. It's only taken off the big list because you're working with it. Can kill people, can cause cancer. And we haven't heard one word from you. And I explained to Mr. Lippick, he's not to be talking to no mayor or Joel. We have a governing body here. He's to be talking to the governing body. And he had already advised that there should have been not only informative meeting, but where it could be inquiry, a symposium with the public. You've never done that. It's never even been discussed. You cannot let people drive wild horses through your town. And everybody's supposed to be so educated and keeps falling for these responsibilities. Well, I'm going to do this and do that. You can't. You're in a position where you have to organize and bring the expert in. There are so many contaminants over there, it's a crying shame. There's not only water remediation, there's soil remediation. And none of that's taken place.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comment? Okay. So tonight's a workshop night, and we're gonna present the comprehensive plan. Michael Baker International is presenting for us. But you don't look like a Mike.
That's the name of the firm.
Yes.
Then, hi, it's Lexi. I just want to let you guys know I'm online. I apologize for not being there in person as well. I just wanted to introduce Michael Baker. Oh, is it working? Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
It's okay. I can do the intro and we can get into it. So this is, we've talked about, there are, I forget the exact number, about 10 public where the Michael Baker team will come in, speak to council, or they'll come in and speak to our planning commission, or in a few cases actually go out, have booths at popular events, meet with residents, talk to local business owners. I mean, it's a full public engagement effort. So this is the first touch point with council. They came here. It's a really important project for us. They prioritized changing their contract to accommodate these in-person meetings. It's better like this. So I'll turn it over to them. They're our experts. They're going to lead this process, but hopefully it's a good starting point for everyone to start to think of questions and ideas to get excited about this.
Thank you, Kyle. Oh,
You didn't miss
okay.
much.
No problem. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Wait, wait. Bar should be up. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Awesome. Yay. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you, Kyle, for that introduction. My name's Samantha McLean. I'm a senior community planner with Michael Baker International, and I'll be serving as the project manager for the Kennett Square Comprehensive Plan. And I'm joined by my colleague.
Tall mic for me. Hi, my name is Alyssa Miller. I'm a senior community planner as well, working with Samantha as the deputy lead and, working a lot with engagement.
So as Kyle mentioned, this is the first of many, many meetings as part of this process. So what we wanted to do tonight was really touch on the topics on your screen. So going over the project team and who you'll be seeing out in the community or at these presentations, because it's a lot more than just Alyssa and me. We'll also be going over just generally what is a comprehensive plan. I know you all were part of the RFP process, so you may know, but this is just a good touch point since there's many members of the public and this is being recorded just to set a foundation about why it's important to do a comprehensive plan. And then the bulk of the presentation will be going over the project scope and schedule kind of in detail. In case you get any questions about the process, you'll understand kind of what it looks like from start to finish. And then we'll end with some next steps and of course, any questions that you may have. Okay, so in terms of our project team, I know it might be a little hard to see on the screen, but in addition to Alyssa and me, who will be kind of your primary points of contact throughout this process, we are supported by a team of planners and subject matter experts. We'll be supported by Troy Truax. He is an expert in municipal financing and a planner alongside us. So he'll be serving as our technical advisor.
In terms of the rest of the team, it's kind of in two buckets. So we have our plan development planners and then our engagement planners. So Alyssa will be supported by 4 planners that will help with engagement, including a graphic design specialist who will be helping with like the branding and messaging around the plan and making sure that our graphics are accessible and user-friendly. And then Maddie Griffith, who will be providing Spanish translation for our written materials. In terms of our plan development planners, we've identified planners that have kind of a specialized expertise in different topics that the plan will focus on. So Matt Bodner will be focusing on transportation. Matt's really familiar with Chester County. He works with Chester County Transit on a few projects and will be focused on transportation and infrastructure for this plan. Seth Coons will be leading the economic development and land use piece alongside me. Seth and I are leading a process right now with your neighbors, New Garden Township, working on their zoning. So we've both been in the area a lot and had a lot of time to walk around your Main Street and the borough at large. Bianca Panuto will be leading the environment piece and natural resources open space. Bianca right now is leading the Chester County Hazard Mitigation Plan. So she has a lot of familiarity with the area and has been working with the borough representatives as well. Laura Spina will be heading up our historic and cultural resources part of the plan. She actually comes to us from the City of Philadelphia's Historical Commission. So she has a lot of great background there. And then finally, certainly not least, Gabby Savoie. She's our spatial analyst doing a lot of the mapping and will also be supporting the engagement. So in terms of our team and kind of Michael Baker's planning practice and our experience with comprehensive plans, we have worked on comprehensive plans throughout the Commonwealth and in Eastern Pennsylvania in general, everything from the borough size. So most recently with Downingtown Borough last year, they adopted their plan all the way up to kind of different townships, rural, suburban townships, everything in between, up to the county level. So we kind of see how a borough plan can interact with a county plan and interact with different aspects of planning. What we really pride ourselves on is making sure that your plans are user-friendly and that they're going to be implementable. Your plan from 2013, I'm just curious, like, out of everyone on the borough, have you interacted with that plan at all recently? Have you opened it within the last year? No, okay. That was not to test you or like put you on the spot, but that's just to illustrate that like a lot of effort goes into these plans and effort and feedback from the community. So we want to make sure it's worth it and that it's actually going to be a usable document for you and not just, be a copy that sits on your shelf. So in terms of what a comprehensive plan is, so a comprehensive plan is a guiding document, kind of like a roadmap for a municipality that's required of all municipalities in Pennsylvania to do an update about every 10 years. It is required by the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, which kind of governs land use and your municipal authority regarding land use. So the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code outlines these factors in terms of what a comprehensive plan must address. So objectives about future development, what that might look like, location, character, timing, land use, housing needs to meet the needs of present residents, but also anyone that's anticipated to move to the borough. A plan for movement of people and goods, just fancy way of saying transportation. A plan for community facilities and utilities, a plan for the protection of natural resources and historic resources, and then a statement of interrelationship between all these elements. Even though they're all separate, they have to work together to achieve your goals. And then finally, it's not just a record of what's happening in your borough, but a strategy, short, medium, and long-term strategies to move your goals forward. So this has not changed for decades. This is kind of what has needed to be in a comprehensive plan for a very long time. And what it resulted in is kind of this traditional comprehensive plan, which your last comprehensive plan was, which was a lot of background studies. It's very thorough. It had a land use plan, housing plan, et cetera, and it checked all the boxes. but the different elements didn't really talk to each other. So in Pennsylvania, we are moving more towards this model of what we call an implementable comprehensive plan. So it still meets all the requirements of that state municipalities planning code, but it does it in a way that's designed to be used by municipal officials, staff, and also community members and partners. So the way we do that is we start with a community vision and some guiding principles that we're going to come back to throughout the planning process to make sure that our focus topics align. Our focus topics, instead of having a chapter that's focused on housing, one that's focused on transportation, we're going to identify kind of the top 5 priority focus areas for the borough and organize the plan that way. So for example, right now we're working with a municipality. One of their chapters is called Accessible Neighborhoods, and that's kind of their focus topic. To get accessible neighborhoods, you need to have an interaction between housing policies and land use, but also the transportation piece, and then access to open space. So rather than having all 3 of those elements in separate chapters, we kind of bring them together to see how they're going to work together to achieve your goals. So in those priority focus topic chapters, we'll have data that validates the issues that we've identified, different goals, and then your recommended solutions, so your actions. And that can be a policy, a program, maybe a suggested capital project, along with some identified funding sources or partners that the borough could explore. And then finally, there will be a future land use plan that kind of ties everything together, that geographically maps your goals. And that is like a great foundation for updating your zoning to be in line with the comprehensive plan. So it'll outline different areas for different types of land uses, but also maybe form considerations or design considerations for that and what infrastructure improvements would be needed. So with that, we're just going to get into what the process is going to look like to create the comprehensive plan. So on the screen right now, you'll see kind of a visual representation of our planning process. So it's about an 18-month process. We are here before you tonight, kind of officially kicking it off. We did have a chance to meet with borough staff in late August to go over our proposed scope of work and also do a site tour of the borough. And we were here virtually at your borough council meeting on August 4th as well. So we're jumping right in. As you can see, we've kind of separated the components into engagement and plan development and adoption. Those work and talk to each other all the time throughout the process. It's just a way to visually organize it. The process is organized into 4 phases. So the first phase, which will happen between now and December, is our understand phase. So we do not ever come into a community with preconceived notions of what's happening or what's needed. So this phase is really our opportunity to conduct research and understand kind of the existing conditions, what has changed since 2013. As Kyle noted earlier, kind of looking at what the changes have been over the years. And then at the same time, we don't want to rely just on our data that we can, at our desks. We want to get out and talk to people and understand what their priorities are. So we do that in a few ways. So we'll do some stakeholder focus groups with a variety of stakeholders, whether it's business owners, neighborhood groups. Those are yet to be identified, where we can have some focused conversations. But we're also going to get out to the general public through what we call our engagement surges. So these are targeted kind of outreach blocks in the process, one during the understand phase and one during the strategize phase, where we'll use surveying, pop-ups, and a workshop to get feedback from people. And Alyssa will go into that a little more. During our imagine phase, this is kind of where we take everything that we learned from the understand phase and start putting together that vision. So what is the vision for the next 10 years? What does that look like? And what are those top focus priorities? In the strategize phase, this is when we start to get into like the nitty gritty. So it's great to have goals, but how are they going to be achieved? Are they feasible? So we're going to regroup with some stakeholders that might be implementation partners and see how they can be partners in implementation. And then we'll be working with the comprehensive plan committee, which Alyssa will talk about in a little bit, to help us come up with some goals and recommendations. And then finally, the last phase in the process is kind of the adoption phase. The municipalities planning code does mandate a public hearing with the Borough Council, a public meeting with Planning Commission, and a 45-day public comment period. So it's just a brief overview, but we'll take you, I know. I realized I was kind of getting ahead of myself with explaining some of the tasks, but we do want to just kind of touch on each task so that you're really clear on kind of what you can expect from us, and the community is clear as well. So the first task is pretty boring. It's just project management and coordination. As I mentioned, we did do a kickoff and a site tour with the borough staff. That was not boring, but project management is kind of, it was great. We spent the day here. It was a beautiful day. Got to walk around and see kind of every aspect of Kennett Square. And every time we come back, we're going to be seeing it a little bit more. In addition to that kickoff and site tour, we will have biweekly check-ins with borough staff just to make sure that we're aligned with the project. And we will be sending monthly invoices along with a status report that can kind of be shared with you all and on the website if desired, that kind of provides an update about what we did that month. So onto a more fun task.
Yeah, not
Good to-
Okay, so Samantha kind of touched briefly on our Comprehensive Plan Committee, or CPC. So here we have our meeting schedule, listed in chronological order. As you can see, virtual versus in-person. The virtual, I think, is really for us at Baker to conserve budget, but we understand the importance of being in person, and so we acknowledge the committee will most likely be in person. We've had very preliminary conversations with Joe and Kyle about developing this list to, ensure a diverse committee and that, the community's long-term goals and objectives are spoken to. So this committee will really, contribute to the overall success of the plan and will help ensure the community's needs and aspirations are met. So working with them is really vital. As you can see, we have all of our meetings here. And that's about it, I think, along with the email correspondence that will be during our non-meeting months. Okay, so this is fun. As a part of our scope, we're also preparing, some materials that can be used to promote our planning process, which is important in community engagement, including, a logo, branding, outreach materials. It's important to us that the logo is unique and reflects Kennett Square's culture, and we're just really hoping that this can convey the value of the comprehensive plan to the public. And so we included some examples here of some branding that we have done at Michael Baker, but again, we're working very closely, with Joe and folks to make sure that what we choose, really speaks to the borough. We've already heard, enough with the Mushroom Festival. We have more than that to offer, and that's very exciting. And we're excited to kind of dive deeper and see what we can visually convey with all the wonderful things happening in the borough. Okay, so once we have the comprehensive plan committee confirmed, we won't engage in any type of, outreach, touch point with the community before we have that committee confirmed to make sure all things are sort of discussed with them. So then we'll kind of coordinate our engagement surges or opportunities. So you'll see on this slide, and again, Samantha kind of touched on this, we have our two different phases, one that's sort of through the fall and winter, quickly approaching, and then we have another throughout the summertime. So they'll be, in the form of surveys, pop-up events, in-person public workshops, just kind of diversifying the way that we connect with the borough. And so again, coordinating closely with Joe and Lexi to understand all, the wonderful community engagement opportunities that we can attend and touch base with the community, such as, the Clover Market at Borough Hall. I know we'd kind of discussed that being a good one. So this is kind of the last piece on engagement, and then I'll pass it back to Samantha. But in addition to our surges, we have some virtual focus groups and stakeholder group interviews, along with some virtual planning commission presentations into the next year. So happy to hear the timing change so that we can be there. And so I think that's about it. I know this is tiny font, but yeah, you'll see our intro is tonight, September 10th. We'll be back in February and then in September 2026. And then we have our virtual planning commission presentations.
Yeah, I think the task 2 community engagement is the largest piece of this presentation, and I hope that one thing to kind of take away is that it's not one and done. We don't go to the community once in the beginning and get feedback, and then they don't see us until the end of the plan. It's really iterative, and it's built that way on purpose. So moving on from community engagement in terms of the plan development itself, task 3 is our existing conditions and trends analysis. So as I said, we have to understand kind of where the borough is right now, where it's been and where it's going. So we are looking at a variety of planning documents that have already been worked on, your roadmap, the previous comprehensive plan. We're looking at your zoning, the Kennett Region Economic Development Study, and then any relevant Chester County plans and DBRBC plans. I know we have a couple missing here. I think the State Street Revitalization Plan is one of them. So we have a comprehensive list, and we've been working with Joe and Lexi to make sure that we're covering all bases. The purpose here is not just to summarize these documents, but really to pull, are there recommendations from these documents that might still be relevant today that we might want to consider carrying into this plan? Are there any funding sources or partners that have been identified in these plans that could be helpful for this process? And any kind of initiatives that we want to keep our eye on. We don't want to be reinventing the wheel. And then finally, after the literature review, we'll be doing our desk research, looking at data and understanding your existing conditions and trends as it relates not only to land use and the environment and transportation, but also to your demographics and socioeconomic data. So task 4 is the vision and focus topics. So as you may remember from that, that first schedule slide, this is in that imagine phase. This is when we really start to put pen to paper and start crafting the plan. So this consists of a vision statement and prioritizing the focus topics. We'll provide up to 7 focus topic reports. These are essentially the chapters of the plan where we do a deeper dive into the data and the information as it relates to your identified topic areas. And then finally, the future land use map or future character area map. You see an example here from Downingtown where we'll outline kind of different types of land uses or different types of form or design are desired in the borough. And then the last task is the plan development and adoption task. This is when you'll see the complete draft plan. We call it the 90% draft. You'll also have an executive summary that will be shareable with others. And then a final comprehensive plan in a PDF format, an interactive PDF format that will allow community members and you all and staff to really dive into some of the visuals and the maps in that PDF format. And then during that adoption process, as I mentioned, we will be at Planning Commission and before you again for the public hearing. Okay, with that, just wanted to touch on some next steps. So not all of those are going to happen, all those tasks are going to happen at once. We're going to start with our literature review and existing conditions analysis as it relates to plan development. And then as it relates to engagement, we're here before you tonight. We'll be at the Planning Commission meeting next week. And then we're aiming to have our first meeting with that comprehensive plan committee in October and really kick off the public engagement surge in October to December. So thank you for sticking with us. I know it was a lot of information, but I hope that it provides you kind of the talking points that you need if you receive any questions about the comprehensive planning process. And we're happy to answer any questions. And our primary point of contact at the borough is Lexi. So she can also answer any questions.
Not tonight.
Not tonight, but in terms of written comment.
Another time.
One of the Kennett Square Borough is a unique place because we have the residents who live here, and then we have lots of communities who come in to Kennett on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Who think of it as their home.
Yeah.
So how are you going to make sure that you reach all those different communities. And because the focus for the borough is mostly borough residents, but the businesses have. Well,
Absolutely. So, one way, so for example, with the survey, one of the questions we'll have right in the beginning is kind of what your relationship with the borough is. And you can select multiple, right? You can be a business owner and also a resident, or, are you just visiting? Do you work here? So that's one way that like, when we get that information and then we're able to filter kind of some of the survey responses based on that information to understand, okay, what are residents saying versus business owners versus maybe community members that just come to visit? Are they aligned? Are they different? How do we consider that in terms of prioritization? But in terms of like reaching people and getting people to actually take that survey or provide us our feedback, I think it's through the selection of the events. And oh yes, and so first of all, the CPC, the Comp Plan Committee, those are residents. So they're really guiding the process and will be with us throughout the entire time. But in terms of like the general public, definitely picking events. We already kind of talked to Joe and Lexi about like, okay, this event gets a lot more locals than this other event that might just get a lot of outsiders. So we want to make sure that we're picking the right event to be at. And then also kind of that public workshop or open house, making sure that we're sharing the outreach materials. We'll be preparing outreach toolkits with sample language, digital graphics, flyers, working with identified community members and neighborhood groups. I know we have some people from different neighborhoods here tonight to kind of share that information with their neighbors and encourage them to come. So we're going to be using a variety of communication channels. Is there anything else? Okay.
because our zip code actually reaches into our other boroughs, so you can't go by zip code when you're identifying.
We're going to do like a self-identification. So when someone takes it, it won't be what's your
Yeah,
zip code.
just to
but-
build on that, lots of people think they live in the borough of Kennett Square that do not live in the borough of Kennett Square.
Okay.
Because our township is also called Kennett.
Sure. So that's really good to know that people might not know where they live.
They don't. I work the polling booth and they never know where they live.
So another way that we can work with that is maybe instead of asking the question or we can't use zip code is exploring use of like a pinpoint on a map or something where they can and they can be general, right? They don't need to give us their address, but here's generally where I live, like maybe a quadrant or something of the borough. So that's really helpful feedback.
Yeah, one of the things I have like perused the old comprehensive plan. I have not engaged with it deeply, but it very much looks like there's areas like the area on open space is cut and paste from other Chester County municipalities. Like, why is open space in the title of this section in a place that has no open space? So what are your thoughts on making it suitable for a borough?
Absolutely. So part of that is because of the way that the municipality's planning code is written and the way that planners a decade ago felt like they had to write these comprehensive plans. So they said, the municipality's planning code talks about open space, natural resources. We have to have a chapter that says that. The implementable comprehensive plan does not follow that. So instead of talking about open space, we might be looking at kind of gathering spaces or ways, or the greenway, right? Which is not necessarily just like a pure open space, but also a transportation opportunity. And so yes, we do not take any language from other plans. It is specifically for Kennett Square Borough. And while we do need to check certain boxes to be compliant with the state, we do it in a way that is looks a lot different from 2013. Great point.
Just because my head is popping with a couple of ideas for our Hispanic community, the Cinco Dias de las Muertas event. I don't know if they're having it this year. It might be is that the corner?
We'll connect you with that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Then obviously, if questions come up, this is an 18-month process, so we don't have to flesh it all out tonight. If questions come up, send them, and we'll get it on to the team.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We look
Thank
forward
you
to
for your
working with
time.
you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, final comments time, Mayor's not here. So manager, do you have any?
Just ending on a very positive note. Today, we were recognized by Chester County. This is National Preparedness Month. We were recognized as the best municipality in Chester County for our use of a sort of approach to emergency operations. So our use of the emergency management software, right? We have 6,000 people. We have 10,000 subscriptions. We updated our emergency operations plan this year. And we have a really good relationship with our social service providers. So out of the 73 municipalities, they said Kennett Square does sort of their best version of it. And so the commissioners wanted to recommend that or commend that.
Congratulations
So-
and congratulations. Sonny was here.
That was Sunny. Yep.
He does a lot of that and chief and police department do a lot of that. So
Yep.
thank you, everyone. I think during Monday night's meeting, it was mentioned about communicating during an emergency. And I know I had a conversation with the chief and the mayor about the last emergency because it happened right up in my neck of the woods. And some of my neighbors were very upset that we were not informed of things. And we kind of got used to getting updates during the escape prisoner. So that set a new precedence. So they were, since Kennett Borough was actually not directly in charge of that event, they were sort of taking a deferential backseat, but they pressed for information to come out when it did, which they felt was late on the next day. So they have made a promise that in the future, they would do better communicating with the community. So just sort of ease everyone's feelings. People felt like they weren't sure if they could go outside or if it was safe, and it was, but they weren't hearing that from us. So they definitely took that into consideration. Comments came back in, just to ease everybody's thought processes on that note. But thankfully that was a non-event in general. On that, I think, does anybody have anything else? On that note, I think we're done for the evening. Thank you. Now, but I like.
That's not you.